Hi everyone, so we have covered orthographic projection and what it looks like with you an angled edge and a round edge. Just as a reminder, an orthographic projection is found within a technical drawing. It's just a projection or two-dimensional view of an object. The sides include top, front, right, left, bottom, and back. The most common sides used are your top, front, and right. The projection is usually laid out in a box form, where the top is on top of the front, and to the right of the front is your right side view, which creates the most common L shape. But if the other views are needed, they will be laid out as if it was an old unfolded box. The views are aligned to display the relationship to one another. The top and the front share the same width. The top and the right share the same depth. The front and the right share the same height. The front view is your main view. It's the one that you start with. It is the most required view because it shows you the most detail as well as the longest edge. We are also started talking about the alphabet lines, which are used within technical drawing, and how they create the language, which helps us interpret what these drawings mean. So each line has a specific meaning or use. Just a reminder, your object line is the heavy dark line that creates that object itself. The construction line is a very thin line that's used to be erased. It is your guide for helping you make your drawings. A leader is an angled line attached to a flat horizontal line, and the arrow is used to point or the user or the reader to the information. It's used for annotations or notes for the viewer, as well as to indicate the diameter or the radius of a round cylindrical object. A hidden line is usually dashed. That is to show what you cannot see. And then we are going to be going over on this one, dimension lines and center lines. So a dimension line includes an extension line, which is a line that's brought off the object, and there's always a gap. It's about 1/16 inch so that you can tell the difference between the object and the extension line. The dimension line is usually indicated with arrows at each end to show where or what is the space size between the two extension lines. The center line is usually a long, short, long line with space in between. If I'm going to have a circle, I will have two center lines or a hole to indicate the height of the hole location as well as the depth of the hole location, so where it's placed from right to left and where it's placed from top to bottom of that object. And on different views, you will note that the hole will come through, or that round curved edge will come through, so you'll be seeing more of a square box, but that center line tells me that that is actually a round portion of the object. So the reason this is important is because those who use it are usually engineers, architects, draftsmen, work with architects, construction workers, and manufacturers. Or even everyone who's involved with any of these careers have to read and understand what these drawings are. So here is our first project or picture. So we are going to start adding dimensional lines, and I'm going to do this in blue. So we see our construction lines here, and we see our object lines in the dark black. So a dimension line is going to be a line that's brought off the object with that 1/16 inch gap, and then we're going to start labeling it. So let's say that that's 1 inch. Notice I use this symbol equals inch, and foot is the 1 line symbol. And then whenever we dimension, we usually start from left to right. So in this case, I'm going to start with this edge and work to the next edge, and then I'm going to come up a bit, and I'm going to go to the next edge, and then I'm going to come up and then go to the next edge. This is to help ensure that I'm going to have all the dimensions that I need. Notice you always want to have your dimensions on the object that displays the most information. So I'm going to put my dimensions on the front because it shows me the most detail, but also a contour. A contour is a change in shape. So this, for example, is showing me high and then low. That's my contour. So that's why I want to measure this. So we talked about also center lines. That's something that I have that's missing, because how do I know where to drill that hole? I also don't know what the size of that hole is. So I want to include, in this case, I can say either the diameter, let's say 2 inches, but also where is that hole located? So I'm going to fix my measurement here, because that's not the next line. My next line is actually the center line. And then I would have that dimension. It starts to get crowded, so you have to usually adjust to sizes and placement. You want to be able to see the actual object, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to just fix this so it's more clear and it doesn't get confusing. So let's say this is 1.5 inches, and let's say that this is 3 inches, and then we can start going here. And in this case, my issue is I have to move my view. I've moved my view because you need that certain space to separate the dimensions, but you also need to have space that separates the object. So if that is, let's say this is 4 inches, I still need to show that this has a round portion. So that's why I put the center line in between there. I put all my dimensions on my front view, so I no longer need any dimensions on the top view for my width. But I could include the dimensions for the depth on my top view. Notice once again, I left a space in between the extension line and the object. And notice also that I made sure that these center lines do not look like my object as well, or part of my object as well. The extension lines are removed, or the construction lines are removed, but I use those construction lines to help me with my dimension lines. Same thing here. I can dimension to my right side view the height. So let's say this is, I don't know, 2 inches. And then that will give me all the required dimensions that I need for this object. So that is just going to be erased, and that's erased. So that gives me everything, but I'm also missing one last line. That last line is my hidden line, because I secretly have an object line that I forgot. The bottom edge of that curved portion cannot be seen on this view. So the bottom edge of the curve follows up with my center line. That's how those line up. But on the right side view, I would actually be seeing a hidden line. And that hidden line is to actually tell me that I need to rotate my object because I'm missing something or I can't see something. This part over here is cut out, and that's what that is telling me. Okay, so here's another object. We're going to start with our dimension. So once again, I start on my front view. I'm going to start from left to right to help me make sure that I know all that I need. I'm going to add my first line. In this case, I made my dimensions, or the arrows, on the outside because I cannot fit my dimension on the inside space. I'm then going to include my center line. And then with that center line, I'm going to include my next dimension. And then I'm going to dimension to the next line. So I'm doing this once again on the contour. The contour is this change from height to down or up like to show that this is a ledge and that's not just a flat object. I could start putting dimensions in other views for clarity, but in this case, whenever we start, we use linear dimensions, which is exactly what I'm showing you. Architecture use a different style, but for engineering, we use this purpose. And remember, you always need to have the longest length. So you need to have a full size dimension for the total height, the total width, and the total depth of your object. As I go, I'm also needing a radius. So I'm going to throw that in there with a leader. And I don't want to, notice I'm trying to avoid crossing in or crossing lines or dimensions whenever I can. So 3-inch diameter. You also don't want to dimension or put anything inside your actual object. That's a no-no. So you always keep dimensions outside the object. You try to keep the dimensions, as you notice, between the adjacent views to show the relationship. So I can say that I understand this line as I'm moving it up with the other edge. So this space right here is 1/2 inch. I know that my location to that center of the hole is going to be whatever this dimension is going to be. I also know what the total length of my hole is. It's going to be here. And then if we start talking about constant need, the fact that I have this 3-inch diameter and this center point, I actually can start conserving or thinking about what dimensions I don't need. So I won't need that dimension. The reason I don't need that dimension is because I know that this diameter is 3 inches, and I know that it starts wherever this location is. Let's say that this is 1 inch. So then I can take another guess, or I can figure out what that edge is going to be. So if this is 3 inches and this is 1/2 inch, then that space is going to be 3.5 inches. So that's why I don't really need to have that dimension, but it's good to have the dimension next to it. So I want to keep that one. So that tells me where that edge starts. The length that's located here is told by the dimension here and its dimension over here. If we start bringing the dimensions up to the top view, I'm missing my center line and I'm missing my depth, let's say 2 inches. That is all I can say that I'm missing on there. And I'm going to start taking away some of these contour lines. All right, notice all the spaces or gaps that I've left in between my object so that you can see that the object is no longer or is separate from the dimension lines. When I come over here, I see that there is a contour line here. That's going to tell me my hidden view, my hidden line, and there is a hole there, but the center point of that hole is on the object line. So whenever an object line is around the same area as a hidden line or a center line, the object line always takes precedence. So it always trumps any of the other lines. So it's the number 1 priority. So the dimensions for this I can put here, from here to there. Let's say that's going to be 2 inches. The problem I have in this situation is I actually don't know what this depth is, and I can't tell. I'm not allowed to dimension to a hidden line. That is a technical drawing no-no. So there are other views that we will talk about to help us figure that out, but that's going to be in a different video. So we're not going to get there right now. So that drawing would usually be called a detailed drawing, or I could even use a section view drawing. So what I did is I cleaned this up a little bit, and I included the dimension drawing, the space right there. I made the leader over here with the diameter, and fixed up the center line. So that is what your proper top front right view with dimensions would look like, with your hidden lines, your object lines, and your center lines, and your dimension lines. So your task is going to be to create an orthographic projection of this cube. Please keep in mind what the top front right is. Note that the hole is centered and it's a 1/4 inch diameter. The cube itself is a 1.5 inch cube, and add an annotation that the material of the cube is aluminum, just like it says right here. Make sure this annotation specifically says this somewhere in your drawing. Upload an image to Google Classroom. So once again, an annotation is demonstrated right here. So I can't wait to see what you submit. Remember all of these dimensioning rules, and good luck.